Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Policy Dialogue Series 2024 to 25. I think this is the fourth episode of the series. And this is called Young People Are the Future, Rebuilding Their Hope and Stake in Hong Kong. And joining us today is, we start with Anthony Cheung, who is currently the Chair Professor and Advisor, Public Administration of the Department of Social Sciences and Policy Studies at Education University of Hong Kong, and the Adjunct Professor of the Division of Public Policy of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. He was the Secretary for Transport and Housing of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region Government from July 2012 to June 2017, and the President of the Education University of Hong Kong, then known as the Hong Kong Institute of Education, from January 2008 to June 2012. And following is Ms. Sharon Cheung, currently a researcher at the Youth Research Center of the Hong Kong Federation of Youth Groups. And then sitting next is Mr. Vincent Chong, who is a social worker and solicitor. As manager, social work of Project Change, a multidisciplinary nonprofit initiative offering complementary services to youths arrested during the protests in 2019. He has practical experience in handling cases of those youths, as well as cases involving juvenile delinquency. And then following is Ms. Choi Sau-ching, is an independent policy advocate who writes frequently in the local media. And last but not least is Professor Tai-lok, is the Adjunct Research Chair Professor of the Department of Social Sciences and Policy Study at the Education University of Hong Kong. From April 2016 to June 2021, he was the Vice President Research and Development of the university. And I am Isabella, I'm currently the Associate Professor at the Department of Social Sciences and Policy Study at the Education University of Hong Kong. And today, I'm the moderator of this Policy Dialogue Series. And so, before we start with Anthony, I would like to give everybody a synopsis of what we are going to discuss. We have the backdrop of what happened in 2022 when President Xi Jinping emphasized the need to care about the young generation, expressed hope that all of Hong Kong's young people would devote themselves to building Hong Kong into a better home, writing a rewarding chapter of their life with impassioned youth. 投身到建設美好香港嘅行列中來，用火熱嘅青春書寫精彩嘅人生。Young people are the future of our society. So what are their aspirations and most pressing concerns today? How can a more conducive environment be fostered to enable them to build their hope and a stake in the city? So we're going to have start off with Anthony and following with the speakers, and then we'll conclude with Professor Lui. And then for anyone who have questions and comments, please leave it on the chat, on the Zoom chat, or if you're watching from the Facebook, please leave it on the Facebook page. So without further ado, Anthony, please.
Thank you very much, Isabella. Today we are going to talk about young people, and as you can guess, I'm not so young, but I've been young before. Every one of us have been young before, so we know what young people are anxious about, of course, in different contexts, because generations do vary. I remember that was in the late 1960s. I was still a late teenager at the time, and the so-called progressive young people, we used to say that don't trust anyone above 30. They're all reactionary. Of course, we have a great dilemma when we reach the age of 30. So let's say that the youth problem is not a new problem. It's around us all the time for different generations. And Isabella quoted President Xi's saying, in fact, he made a very important speech in July, I think on the 1st of July, 2022. That was the 25th anniversary of the Hong Kong SAR. And he made a number of points, expectations, hopes for Hong Kong's future. And he particularly mentioned young people. I think he probably had 2019 in mind, because 2019 was, to some extent, a great expression of how and what young people felt strongly about, whether we agree with them or not. So let's look at what Xi Jinping said. He said we must pay special attention to and care for young people, Hong Kong will prosper only when its young people thrive. Now, if we take that statement as important guidance, if you like, to Hong Kong, then whether or not we manage our young people, whether we provide them with room for development, whether we give them hope, is very important for Hong Kong's future. And President Xi is not the only Chinese leader to emphasize the importance of young people. Let's look at what Chairman Mao said in his time. He made his only trip to Moscow in November 1957, so a few decades ago. And he said, basically, and he has, of course, he made a speech in Chinese. Basically, he said, the nation's future is yours, the young people's. The world's future is yours. You are like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, the sun. You're full of hope. So he said, well, the world belongs to us. It belongs to you. It belongs to us too. We are still around. But ultimately, it belongs to you, meaning young people. They are the future. They are the hope of our nation. The current administration in Hong Kong released a statement, actually a blueprint on youth development in December 2022. And you can find all the important keywords of how important young people are and how the SL government aspires to provide an environment for nurturing young people so that they can strive for continuous growth and unleash their full potential in society and contribute to the world, contribute to Hong Kong, contribute to the Chinese nation. And 4 directions were outlined: exploration, hope, empowerment, contribution. I'm not going into the detail. You can find details in the actual blueprint. But I would like to suggest that, in fact, what we are proposing to do in Hong Kong, the important dimensions, are to some extent no different from blueprints elsewhere. So let's look at what the OECD, what we call the Rich Countries Club, has to say about youth policy. And they outlined in their youth policy toolkit, they outline 5 pillars, important dimensions. So skills and competencies, how to enliven the youth labor market, entrepreneurship, social inclusion, how to promote young people's trust in government and the relationship with public institutions. The trust is a very important issue, not only in Hong Kong but elsewhere as well. And the government has to have administrative and technical capacities to address age-based inequalities. Of course, age-based not just in terms of young people, but also maybe the elderly. So every country, every city is facing a youth problem, but in different contexts. Sometimes more economically oriented, sometimes in terms of how people see the future. The world is rather volatile, uncertain, and their perception of the world may well be quite different from their parents' or grandparents' generation. Now, are Hong Kong people, young people in Hong Kong, happy? So let's look at a survey conducted by the City University in 2019. That was before the outbreak of the so-called social incident or the political turbulence in 2019, comparing young people in Hong Kong with their counterparts in Singapore. Now you'll find that if you look at the figures, young people in Hong Kong are relatively unhappy compared to young people in Singapore. And they are mostly unhappy about housing and political and social situation. And we know why. And 2019 to some extent reflected that. And compared to Singapore, Singapore's score was almost double that of Hong Kong. They by and large, they were happy. They were around number 7, number 8, which is quite nice, because you can never find young people who are entirely happy. If they are too happy, they are not young people. Now, let's look at young people in Hong Kong today. Let's conduct a very brief stock taking. Now, on the left-hand side of the slide, you find some statistics. In terms of post-secondary participation rate, we are more than 80%, which is a very nice figure. In terms of youth unemployment, the unemployment rate is quite low. For those aged 20 to 29, 6.5%. For those aged 30 to 39, only 2.9%, which is the provisional figure as at the last quarter of 2024. Now, in terms of average salary, on the surface, it looks fine, looks okay, because $22,000 Hong Kong on average for those aged 25 to 35, and 23,000 for those 35 to 44. However, of course, if we go back to figures, maybe the growth in salary has been behind the growth rate of expenses, particularly housing. And housing is a big issue. So let's look at rent. $340 per square meters, quite a high level. And housing price, again, quite high. And here the figure I use, I think is for a unit in the new territories, which is cheaper. Hong Kong is still one of the major housing markets in the world where housing is least affordable. So we need to save money, spend no money, not a single cent for over 16 years now before we are able to buy a flat. It's already a slightly better figure because 3 years ago it was more than 20, 22, 23. Now, if you look at share of homeowner households with heads aged below 35, so young people, their household, the percentage has come down from 22% in 1997 to a slight over 7% in 2019. So not too nice a trend. Now, on the right-hand side of the slide, I try to outline some aspects where we should be concerned about. Young people are concerned about the slowing down of social mobility. They don't find they're as mobile as their parent generation or the grandparent, or maybe even the grandparents' generation. They have this identity anxiety, which has been around in Hong Kong for the last couple of decades. They're unhappy. Now, by and large, Hong Kong people are unhappy. According to the World Happiness Index last year, Hong Kong ranks 86 out of 144 countries and jurisdictions, compared to a much nicer figure, maybe around 60 on the mainland, and even nicer figure in Taiwan and Singapore. Now, for young people, according to that index, young respondents aged under 30 rank 97th. So they're even more unhappy than the general figure. They are under stress, according to a study led by the Xi'an University last year. 22.8% of the Generation Z, aged 18 to 26, they reported symptoms of stress. 30% symptoms of anxiety, and 22% symptoms of depression. Now, of course, we should not say that Hong Kong is unique, but that's, in any case, within Hong Kong, that should be an area we should be concerned about. And over 50% of young people surveyed by the Hong Kong Christians Service last year, the report was released in December, find that they consider themselves failures, primarily due to academic performance. So that's another aspect that they are unhappy about. And according to the Hong Kong Federation of Youth Groups, their study released in November last year, I'm sure Sharon will talk more about that, 60% of young people are pessimistic about the economic future. So figures are mixed. I mean, some statistics show that they should be better off, and yet they are unhappy, they are under stress, they are depressed. Now, I mentioned the Hong Kong Federation of Youth Groups. In their report in July 2022, more than 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, we find that the young people, they are still concerned about some important core values: freedom, democracy, rule of law, things like that. And the latest findings still find that they are concerned about those core values. The Federation of Youth Groups Youth Trends in Hong Kong report last year. The figures, by and large, have slightly improved compared to the figures a couple of years ago. However, we should notice that the final bullet point, although they are slightly more positive about political efficacy, the proportion of young people reporting a negative outlook on life, this overall outlook, has increased from 24.6% in 2020, that was right after 2019, the unrest, to 32.6%, almost 1/3 in 2023. Now, we don't know what the figure might be in 2024. The report this year will talk about that. But that means the trends are not looking good. So we should be concerned about how to turn around the situation if we are to respond to President Xi Jinping's call for caring more about our young people. I would say that in very general terms, young people in Hong Kong, they are better educated than their predecessors, but they find that they have poorer mobility and less security in life. Now that probably is a situation around the world, in many other cities, in Sydney, in London, even in Seoul and in Tokyo. A few years ago, I remember I gave a similar dialogue session, and I mentioned that young people in Hong Kong, they could be regarded as a 3D generation. They feel dispossessed. Property is one example, housing, the means of life, disenfranchised. Politically, they feel they don't have much say, and disillusioned. Disillusioned in terms that Hong Kong since the 1980s and 90s have been talking about the Hong Kong dream, the middle class dream. And somehow, many of them, they find that dream has maybe is evaporating. Not so real now. So they're discontented about the status quo. They have this sense of skepticism, even resentment towards the political establishment. And 2019 was a great example of the youth fury. Now, there are many reasons to explain that. We are not going into that, such details today, but let's remember 2019 was a year where young people were quite extensively involved for various reasons. This few years, the government and the business community are talking about how to improve their situation in study, employment, entrepreneurship, and home ownership. I think these are all things that we should be doing. But at the same time, we have to understand what young people care about in addition to those 4 areas. And I would say that young people are typical. There are two things that we might argue, we might say that are typical of young people. On one hand, they are very idealistic, but somehow they're also becoming more fatalistic when they face the real situation. Hong Kong is not unique. So I find that in the 1980s, I mean, according to Simon Thith, youth in the 80s, a dispossessed generation. And then a generation later, or more than a generation later, in 2019, intergenerational warfare. Who stole the millennials' future? Okay, so young people complain about the parent generation, the grandparents, the baby boomers, and then the baby boomers complain about young people not as good as they are. So we must break this generational gap. So final slide. How do we remake the future for young people? This should be a collective endeavor. And I would say that future making is what Hong Kong needs to think further about. It's not just about creating material improvement benefits, Those are necessary. But those are what behavioral psychology will describe as the hygiene factors. You need the hygiene factors. But at the same time, that's for maintenance. But at the same time, you need motivating factors to do more than that. You need to create a sense of self-worth and self-realization that they can achieve something. What they can achieve is not what is given to them by the parents, grandparents, by the government, by business. They must have this sense of creating what they aspire to achieve. So this sense of stake and pride in what they are doing. And they still embrace some core values, which I just mentioned, according to the survey conducted by the Federation of Youth Groups. And the question is, are these core values still the defining features of our society? If they are, then by and large, we are on the same page as our young generation. But the world is becoming more uncertain, and young people need to own the future by removing the sense of insecurity, the dangers. At the same time, they have this sense of ownership. And they cannot have a sense of ownership or destiny for the future unless they believe they are somebody. I mean, we have all been young people before. So if we feel that we are somebody, that we count, then we have a sense of hope, we have a sense of ownership of future. So who am I is the most important question. Not just in the material sense, in the existentialist sense, but also in terms of what Hong Kong is between our nation, China, and the world. Hong Kong has always been a very important connection. So is this connection still there? And do our young people identify with that connection? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. That was a really good start that we have been given an overview of what's going on now and how should we take it from there. So over to you now, Sharon.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Professor Cheung, for describing the general vision of the nation and the HKSAR government on our young people. And I have been working in my team for more than 20 years. Next. Here, right. I have been working in my team for more than 20 years. I hope my presentation this morning, based on my work experience, could enrich the discussion on this topic. My presentation will touch on 3 questions. A, what if there is no hope? B, why is rebuilding young people's hope is an issue in Hong Kong? C, how could we respond? May I invite everyone here to have a quick think. What if there is no hope? Maybe put it in another way. What we could have if there is hope? For me, hope is the fuel for motivation, enabling us to go through difficult time. It will improve our resilience. It directs our way to the future. For the question, why rebuilding young people's hope in Hong Kong is an important issue, I'm now going to cite some survey findings conducted by my organization, the HKFYG, to summarize what did our young respondents say and think in their hopes in Hong Kong. The select data are worthy of our attention. There are 3 sets of data: civic engagement, outlook on self and Hong Kong, and affection for the city. First, data related to young people's civic engagement. Our previous research showed that the percentage of young people who trusted government has constantly been at a low level. In 2023, for the first of its kind, more than half of respondents trust the government. But look at the red color. At the same time, a similar percentage, more than half of the respondents, don't think that the government trusts them. And a sizable percentage, 31%, have the same feeling when asked if they think that the public trusts you. No, the youth not be trusted. More, their sense of efficacy has diminished. In 2015, 10 years ago, our survey looked at more than half of respondents believe that their participation helps improve the social phenomenon that they want to change. But today, in 2025, the percentage drops visibly to 40%, while those who answer don't know has doubled from 8% to 18%. Second, data related to young people's perception on self and Hong Kong's outlook. Here, an increasing percentage of respondents feel negative on their social mobility in recent years, from 44%, 45%, 48%, and now 53%. In 2022, 3 years ago, in a survey, we asked about how they think, how do they foresee their own development in 10 years. The largest proportion of respondents answer, don't know. Worse still, the proportion of feeling pessimistic about Hong Kong's development in 10 years outweighs those of feeling optimistic. The development of Hong Kong is closely linked with the nation. Here is one relevant finding from the survey, showing how young people think on their role in the process of the nation's development. You see, a noticeable 42% of respondents say they are the bystanders. Third, data related to young people's affection for the city where they live. Here some promising data are observed. Have a look. For example, an overwhelming percentage, we see 85% of young people keep saying that they love their community. More, in recent years, there is an improvement of young people's sense of belonging to Hong Kong since it has reached its lowest point in 2020. In addition, young people have got some expectations on the current term HKSAR government. Apart from hard issues like solving housing problems and promoting diverse industries, young people most hope the government would do something for them are soft issues like listening to their voice, mending relations, and building mutual trust. Overall, in recent years, the central government and the HKSAR government have attached great importance to the youth development, and Professor Cheung has mentioned some in his PowerPoint, and I do not repeat here. Our most updated youth value indicators survey in 2023 shows some positive insight. Young people are gradually picking up confidence in personal abilities, and they are improving their perception on the general situations of the society a little bit at that time. Nonetheless, in between young people and the society and the nation, the connections are still cautious and weak. For the last question, how could we respond? I do believe that everyone in the society could do something as a bridge to connect young people and the bigger society, the nation and the society, through diversified opportunities. As one of the NGOs in the city, my organization has a role as well. Let me briefly share with you, for example, what my team has done to take a part in paying efforts to rebuild young people's hope in their loved Hong Kong. We run a local youth think tank called the Youth Ideas, turning young people's voice and concerns into evidence and recommendation-based research for public policy advocacy. The ideas that they put forward reflect their hopes and aspirations as a stakeholder for the well-being of young people and the Hong Kong society. Members of the youth ideas go through different steps in the process. The process of such kinds of engagement is not easy indeed, both for me, for my team, and for the members. However, with hopes, we move on, we thrive, and we develop. Do young people's ideas come true? Yes, to some extent. Over the past 10 years, we have completed more than 80 research with more than 360 recommendations. Around 1/10 ideas were incorporated by the government. For me, the number is not my main concern. My main concern is to make sure that this platform can really engage young people who still have a heart for the betterment of Hong Kong through public policy advocacy. In conclusion, I do believe that rebuilding young people's hope is a big issue with no quick fix. However, from my experience, I believe very strongly that genuine engagement with young people through whatever opportunities or platforms can bring this big issue to a more down-to-earth level so that it is practical and workable. I also believe that the first steps towards engagement are mutual trust and dialogue, like today, to make an impact. These are the key factors. Finally, engagement rebuilds hope, and with hope, young people will have a stake in Hong Kong as their home. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for sharing the data and very important insights on what's going on with the youth. So can I just invite Vincent to share your thoughts with us? Vincent, over to you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm from Project Ching. I'm the social work manager of the Project Change, and I am going to talk about 2019 social movements. After the social movement, what the arrest youth face, and what is the implication for us when we talk about the hope of the youth in future. We are a organization founded in 2020, providing comprehensive support for the youth, including during the litigation process and also after they are discharged if they are found to be guilty and serve their sentence. And it is a long process, so we have witnessed a number of changes over the years, and I would like to share some with you. But let's look at the backdrop of the issue. This is the Security Bureau statistics in up to 2024. Number of persons arrested in the 2019 social movement is slightly more than 10,000, and around 3,000 were prosecuted, and most of the cases prosecuted just completed the litigation process, but quite a number of them are still serving the sentence. My estimate would be a bit less than 1,000 or so. But of course, it seems that compared to the total number of youth, this group of people are not that big. But I have to remind all of you as the audience that the total number of the arrested person may seem to be low, but if we take into the account of their peers, their close ones, they also experience part of the pain, part of the sufferings of these arrested youth. So I would put it that more than 100,000 people may have experienced the litigation process somehow in the past few years due to the social movement, and they do have some implication on the youth outlook in future. This is a psychological theory. When we talk about why people feel hopelessness, we always talk about the learned helplessness theory. The original experiment is testing the rats to try to electrify them no matter what they do, and gradually they would learn that they no matter what they do, they could not help themselves. And perhaps this theory may guide us to look into the perspective of the youth, arrested youth in the past few years. For these 10,000 arrested youth, the first question for them is when would they face prosecution, and would they face prosecution? And until they are notified, they were notified that they would be prosecuted. They don't know the progress of the prosecution and whether they would, the ultimate outcome. As the chief executive said, I think in last year, there is always open possibility for the government to look into the evidence to decide whether they would consider a prosecution in on a rolling basis. In that case, it seems to be a hanging factor over the youth, especially those unprosecuted and not yet prosecuted. Yeah. After being prosecuted, we look into the litigation process. Unfortunately, due to the great influx of the public order-related criminal proceedings, there has been an undue delay overall speaking. Most of the young people will have to wait for 3 years before they decided to plead guilty or they have to face their sentence. And during this long period, they still have to consider what to do during the process, because if they face imprisonment, their lifespan will be interrupted undoubtedly. So they sometimes they just idling. I saw some youths idled because they do not know what to do. They have to face the trial, and if they plan more than 2 years, it's not going to work because they don't know the outcome of their criminal proceedings. If they are fortunate enough to be found acquitted, then that's the end of the matter. But for most of them, they would have to face sentence, and the sentence they would face would I observe is there has been a great disparity. Some of them we were talking about 6 years, 5 years, but some of them we are talking about 3 years. But after all, 3 years is not a short period of time, and they would always question, oh, what I would face in future. They don't know what to do, and even if they are fortunate enough to obtain a acquittal, then the next question is, will the prosecution launch an appeal? And they always deal with the uncertainty, making them they have limited power over what to do. A number of the youths actually served their sentence, as I just mentioned at the beginning. And the next question for them is, how could they resume their life? During the imprisonment, some of them have the fear that they will be forgotten by the loved ones, because it is not easy to pay a visit to the prisoners in Hong Kong in general. You would have to sometimes go to the South Lantau Island, spending 3 or 4 hours per week just to pay a visit to your loved one for just half an hour. So and the chances of being visited by the loved ones are not really that frequent, because they only got 2 to 4 times of a family visit or compassionate visits per month. So they would have the fear of being forgotten by their loved ones, by their friends. They would no longer be able to resume relationship with them. In terms of the career, they would also have to consider the impact brought by the criminal records. Some of the youth, unfortunately, are quite well educated. A number of them are having undergraduate degree or a postgraduate degree. But if they pursue some professional or some white-collar profession, they would have the fear that the criminal records will scare the employers. Their employers would not have the patience to scan through to understand their background. If you have tens of thousands of job applicants, how would you spend your time to understand why they committed? This is very easy. This is very easy for the employer to screen them out. And they also have the fear of falling behind because when they are in the prison, they are counterparts of the same age, are still developing their career, and they would, if they are serving 4 to 5 years of imprisonments, then it would lead to quite a significant difference. Perhaps they are still the freshmen after discharge, but their counterparts maybe already obtained some achievement in their career. So they would have some comparison and have so low self-esteem. And even for those studying, they would have the difficulty of picking up studies. I remember I have quite a number of clients studying some professional discipline, like perhaps medical discipline or engineering discipline. After the long gap, they would have questioned that whether they can pick up their study progress themselves. And even if they have acquired the professional license before the sentence, they would also have to face the question as to how the professional body would deal with them. As I shown in the PowerPoint, the medical council, although did not really gave a suspended sentence instead of actual disqualification, the youth will still have the fear of what implication they would face in their professional career. So for this group of young people, they may have received the following message. The society is not forgiving them, is not no longer tolerate them and let them to survive on their own. And they would not forgive their deeds, no matter what your political stance is. And the society may not be supportive for them to prosper even after they duly serve their punishment by way of sentence. From a social worker angle, my job is to listen to these young people, to withhold judgment on them, to not giving advice, endorsing their power to recover, recognize their feeling. But how could we do it at societal level? Even for those have not directly impacted by the social movement, I also observed that there is some collective trauma because some, to be honest, quite a number of the participants in the social movement were not arrested, but they still have the fear and they still encounter some kind of trauma arising out from the incident. They perhaps part of the symptoms would be hypervigilance, lack of trust to the government, and they try to distance themselves from the society to protect themselves, etc., etc. But do we have the chance of exploring our thoughts and feelings surrounding trauma? I don't think we have really such opportunity at societal level in the past few years. Without the human contact from the collective trauma therapists, it's quite difficult for us to navigate through the suffering and to take our lesson during this trauma. Lots of people talk about the pessimism. Sharon talked about it. Professor Sharon talked about it, and also my observation is breakthrough research also observed the same, and my personal experience is the same. They do not know what they can do. The powerlessness is the overarching theme when we talk about the youth in Hong Kong right now. Uh, to overcome the issue, my personal experience is to develop the locus of control of the youth. Perhaps any grant for them to have the sense of achievement, to have some small win, to allow them to create as the platform mentioned by Sharon, and anything else can we provide the room for the youth, and can we offer more acceptance by action instead of by paying lip service? It's quite easy for us to say we forgive young people, but we do not do actual action of moving on, showing that we are turning over the new page, not repeating the past. Then it may be a way for them to have the sense of hope. My personal take in participating the project is it is not entirely hopeless for the issue. Many difficulties for youth to create, for me to boost their morale. But if we provide a small room of diversity, of tolerance, by actual experience, they will feel that there are still someone that are forgiving them. Actually, in some of my cases, some kind-hearted employer would pay visit to the prisoners. And this is actually a very good gesture to show them we do not forget them, and we really forgive them and we welcome them after they serve their punishment. The question is how to let the young people feel, not just the government, I would say, it's everyone's duty to reflect on. And we, of course, in my past experience as social worker, we do some persuasion for the court to balance punishment and rehabilitation. So there are still room to fight at a micro level, at individual level. But perhaps it may not be a time for the meso level change, but it's not nothing. It's not nothing we can do right now. So I hope no matter what your political stance are, we hope you can care about the young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. That's really scintillating thoughts that how can we, in actual fact, we can help the youth, and how could we help in our individual as well as community level, that we could provide support and love and care for them so that they feel there's a sense of hope. Then I'll pass the time to Sau-ching so that,
Thank you, Vincent, for shedding light on a very important group of our society. And thank you, Anthony, for inviting. Actually, when I first know about this event, my first reaction, I thought to myself, is such a very difficult topic to talk about. And my second thought is, I don't want to give a false hope by participating in this discussion. But then turned out I still decided to be part of the panelists because I want to share my own perspective if given this chance to share some of my take. It's by no means representing all the young people in Hong Kong, but I just wish to share my own story and then some of my thoughts. Time back to 2019 and after COVID, I think it was a challenging time for many of us during COVID. And I had a lot of personal reflections myself during that time. It was during a lot of isolation because we could barely join like social gatherings. It's quite difficult to meet with other people and to exchange real thoughts and to have dialogues about what happened next. And I could feel a lot of frustration, mistrust, hopelessness around the society. And that I got to have some personal reflection about re-evaluating the values that I believe in, including what Anthony mentioned about freedom, rule of law, justice, etc. And I think after some time of personal reflection, in the end, I think it's about a personal choice about what we choose and where we stand. It's about choosing between indifference and care, isolation or community, and whether indifference or actions. So it was a very long process of reflection to me. It's very challenging and difficult. And I think it's also a time of finding what each of us values, despite what is happening in the society. And I think in the end, the core question about today's topic, rebuilding stake and hope, is about, do we really want to build hope? And I think that's the question that I need to ask myself. And I hope that the audience today will ask ourselves as well. It's about whether we want to build hope. And despite what is going on in the society, do we want to build hope despite not seeing a clear future of what will happen in Hong Kong? Do we want to see hope when there are a lot of frustrations and unimaginable things that are happening? Do we want to see hope when there are a lot of things that are beyond our control? So I think in the end, during my reflection, that's where I make the choice of where to stand, about choosing what I can do beyond my control. So I think that's how my personal reflection was during the past few years. And I think it's also a question that we need to ask ourselves, and no one else can choose for me. No one else can choose whether I would choose hope or doing small action that matters. So after making the choice, then what's next, right? Whether we, after we choose, if we do choose hope, then what it means, I think when talking about hope, we need to redefine what hope means, right? Because when I was asking my friends when I was preparing about this topic, they were like, oh, it's such an optimistic topic to comment on, right? Or some of them would be like, I don't have any comments on this topic. Then I think we need to redefine what hope means. I don't think hope is something that has to be very grand or big, that we need to solve a social issue overday. I don't think hope means there's no bad news on the TV or on newspapers. I don't think like hope means like, oh, like everything is bright. We look like all sunny days afterwards. I don't think so. I think hope to me means that I choose to make an action that I feel like I could create a bit of impact. I think hope means that we lift each other up. I think hope means that we create rooms for other people. I think hope means we accept people for who they are and to make people feel like they belong to the place that we are sharing together. So I think after redefining hope, then it's less difficult to make the choice, because then we gradually see more tiny acts that maybe hope is not as big or like as unimaginable as we thought. In the past few years, when I was like chatting with many friends, I actually think that people, it's not that we don't feel like don't want hope. It's that we don't want fake hope. I think people do want real hope that make them feel like they have confidence in the future. So back to what creating real hope means, I think if each person can make the choice of what they think is real to themselves, then we create a bit more hope in a society. And I think that's how I take this topic about my personal reflection and to redefine what hope means on an individual level and a societal level. And then how, I think I briefly mentioned. I think sharing more of our personal opinions help, but I do understand that it could be difficult for some people, that there might be hesitations, would there be consequences? And I think that's also actually why we need to create safe space for people to share. And I can't do it on a large scale. I can only do it on my personal environment. And I think if each person, we could try to create a space where people feel comfortable sharing their views, then maybe hopefully more young people will feel they belong, that they are accepted as who they are. Even we might not be able to change what is going on a policy level or what the government would do. Yeah, so after sharing some of the more abstract thought, I also found the same report that Vincent shared about from the breakthrough survey research. They did survey about like how whether young people have hope towards themselves and then towards the society. And then for the rates, the young people rates like 6.3 out of 10 towards like hope towards self, but only 4.8 out of 10 of hopes towards the society. But actually, more than 70% of the young people are willing to contribute to Hong Kong. So then the question I need to ask myself is, how do I, within my control and environment, to uplift more people? And I think that's how me as a person can do when sharing such a big topic about how to rebuild hope and stake for the young people in Hong Kong. And I think one of the things that I wanted to highlight is how to make young people feel like they belong. After Vincent shared about like a lot of stories that you guys have served, I think it's a very uneasy situation to solve. It's uneasy, but it also means that every person can try to do something. And I think that with the difficulties that we have overcome, there is also strength in each decision we choose, despite the difficulties and challenges. Yeah. So, and then it get back to this morning when I'm on the way to this venue. It's quite a gloomy environment this morning. And then I went through like a tunnel on the way, and then there is always like light at the end of the tunnel, right? But I do understand that some people don't see it when it's in a very, very dark situation or like very challenging situation. But when we choose to see, choose that what matters, what we still value, we just have to walk through the tunnel. And I think we can't control the future, but we can control the present. So it's about whether we choose to walk now through the tunnel together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sau-ching, for the really personal and reflective thoughts. And now I'll pass the time to Tai-lok to share his opinion and his thoughts. Tai-lok, please.
Okay, thanks very much. It's always my privilege to speak as the last speakers because firstly, I don't need to repeat points of already been covered. And secondly, it's being the last speakers is able to pick on the wisdom of earlier speakers, and that definitely benefit me. Okay, I do have a PowerPoint. Okay, yes. This is the heading or the title of my brief talk. I think I raised the same question a couple of years ago when we also discussed the topic of young people. Are you really talking to me? I will explain why, again, I come up with this issue. It's because if you really take a look at what's going on in the government. Of course, the current administration and actually earlier administrations as well, they have done something. They have tried to do something about the young people. Particularly the current administration, they changed the name of the bureau, now from Home Affairs Bureau, now becoming Home and Youth Affairs Bureau. And theoretically, it's supposed to be coordinating various bureaus in the formulation of an overall youth policy. Though at the same time, quite honestly, I'm not quite sure about what it, even up to this moment, what exactly is the overall youth policy. But anyway, at least it's working on it. Have a new title of the bureau and telling you how serious they are. We have the Youth Development Blueprint. Again, theoretically, it set up policy objectives. So nowadays we have objectives to be made, and there should be priorities for youth development. So how to prioritize, I'm not quite sure that I really find it out from the document, but that's probably my issue. And then there are actions and measures under the headings of, already covered by Anthony, exploration, hope, empowerment, and contribution. Quite honestly, this is quite comprehensive. And one of the things that I have a strong feeling about when I'm reading the blueprint is it's very difficult for you to say no to any sentence in that report. You know, it must be right. But sometimes when you read something, especially for sociologists, is when you find something is always right, then perhaps something is wrong there. But this is not a fair comment, so I'll take it back. So if you really look at what the government has been doing, quite honestly, there's no shortage of action and initiatives. And in fact, if you go to the blueprint and look at the actions and measures they have done, they have a list of completed projects, a list of ongoing projects, and then a list of future projects. So it's a very, very tall list. If I can only come up with an excuse for not able to finish my PPT before the expected time, and I'm barely able to finish it yesterday's evening, it's because it took me quite a lot of time to finish sentence by sentence about work completed and ongoing and so on. Many of them. But at the same time, if you really read into the finer prints, then you notice that actually a lot of those works are actually regular work by government bureaus. So many of them are actually carried out by EDB, the Education Bureau. Whether you have a youth policy or not, the government has been doing it all the time. Of course, that's a government. You know, they have many branches and many bureaus, and as a result, you have that. And to be fair to them, of course, there are also new initiatives. So because of the Greater Bay Area, so definitely there would be GBA-related initiatives, touch on young people and so on. Because of the importance of national education, national security education, of course, there are now a lot of these initiatives. And in fact, when you read them probably there are, I won't say too many, but there are really, really many items related to these sort of things and completed successfully. And I also need to confess that the coverage is very broad. So I would not criticize the government by saying that, you know, they haven't done or missed certain important items in the work. In fact, they almost cover everything. Whether they cover it effectively, efficiently, that's again another issue. My concern is, I understand that the government has been working hard, and also a lot of voluntary groups, NGOs also contribute to future youth development. But for me, the problem is the general narratives. I always have the impression is either they're talking to the young leaders or talking to those who are less resourceful, coming from poor family, weaker schools, and so on. So probably you also receive certain attention. And then if you happen to be the elite, the cream, definitely you find perhaps a lot of these internship locally, internship in GBA, internship in mainland China, internship in abroad, and so on and so forth. But sometimes I do ask, and this is why the reason I have the title for my talk is, are you talking to me, is what about the ordinary kids? What about really young people who are quite ordinary? Of course, most of the time we don't talk about them. For example, every year when we have the release of the results of the DSE, we look at the really cream, those who really score everything in 5 stars, and then, they would walk straight into the medical school and so on. But sometimes if you look at the figures, 49,000 students took the DSE in 2024. Only 19,000 of them actually met the requirements of getting into the local undergraduate program, which means score 3 in Chinese, 3 in English, 2 in maths, and pass in another subject and so on. The figures of 19,000, of course, are all students attending the DSE. If you just look at those students taking DSE from day school, then the percentage is higher. It comes up to 45%. But if you look at the figures again, it does telling you that, we have a lot of students actually not meeting 3 in Chinese, 3 in English. And it's also tell you that we have a lot of students barely meeting 3 in Chinese and 3 in English. To follow the academic track actually is very challenging for this group of people. Of course, now you say that, okay, the government's coverage is very broad. They're not talking about just focusing on getting a university degree. Now we have applied science programs, we have new initiatives, we encourage you to become an entrepreneur, we talk about creative industries, we talk about a lot of these things. But honestly, probably because of my own personal background, when I was doing my secondary school, between Form 1 and the Christmas of Form 4, I was a load of rubbish. I was the last in the whole form when I was in Form 1. That's not easy. I'm not last in the class, it's last one in the whole form. Rank 160th among 160 students. That's quite an achievement, quite honestly. I mean, if you still survive. The other thing is, I'm also a lot of rubbish in terms of arts, paintings, all those things. For me, it's a waste of time. For this teacher, it's also a waste of his time. A lot of rubbish in music lessons. In fact, our music teacher decided not to teach us music in Form 3 and Form 4 because we are not doing well. And for physics, in my whole life, I never managed to score any point. But if someone take out the archive in my secondary school, they will notice that I actually managed to get 20 in one of my tests in physics. It was only because so many of us fell in the test. The vice principal walked into the classroom and said, today I give everyone 20 marks. And I would like you to see how many marks you got. I belong to the group of getting 20. So I got 0. Throughout all those years, I was doing physics. So nowadays, I imagine if I'm still a teenager, when you guys keep talking about STEM, STEAM, it's not for me. And then you say, okay, don't worry, you can be creative, right? And then not for me as well. So you want to become an entrepreneur. My father don't have the money. So where would you be? Of course, now I would say you would end up becoming a professor. Life is going to be all right. Recently, I joined a career planning workshop with teenagers. And one young person asked me, when did you have this idea of becoming a professor? I said, quite honestly, I don't know. But now, looking back at the age of 60-something, I noticed that there are hints. Because around the age of 20, I noticed that I can write. But I was warned by my sister that I don't know how to type. because even nowadays I cannot coordinate my left hand and my right hand. So my left hand can only push the button of shift. All the typing is done by one finger in my right hand. So I cannot type. Imagine that you are growing up in the 1970s. The fact that you cannot type in a manual typing machine, meaning that you cannot become a clerical worker. But who would become to find a job for someone who cannot type but can write? Now I know, is to become a professor. But that's post hoc, retrospective. So I said to the young person that, sometimes you cannot plan your career. But this is not a good advice, because nowadays we have too many career planning workshops for them. Anyway, the point I want to make is, well, there are a lot of ordinary people. So I want to echo the point made by Ching is, have we really paid enough attention to ordinary young people that would make the hopes real hopes, not remote, not untouchables, not something that, beyond their reach. So we have been talking a lot about multiple pathways for young people. But these are things that, it's not just about having more initiative. You really need to have ways that they can, progress along very diverse tracks and pathways. And these would lead to some of the problems that now we are encountering in Hong Kong that we never ask. Some of them are actually institutional. For example, I still think that, the monetary returns to manual skills in Hong Kong is very low. Sometimes when I need to fix the tire of my car, I went to the shop that I normally consult. They still charge me something like $100, $150 to fix my tire. Of course, I was grateful because it's cheap. But then, of course, my friend reminded me that, oh, you're still coming to my shop. That's good. Because someone would say that they can do it even cheaper in Shenzhen. But, this guy worked very hard. Not easy job. Quite demanding. But you would think that, in Hong Kong, fixing a tire, okay, 100, 150. Okay, I give you 180. That's the most I can give it to you. How come? If you look at technical people who are fixing our elevators, the monthly salary is, well, not very bad, but never become very high. But there are shortage of those people. But in Hong Kong, whenever you find shortage of manual skills, the first answer pop up in our mind is import labor. Not to think about how to rearrange the skill sets and the system so that we would reward people who work hard or along certain skills, and they would be rewarded. And some of our problems are actually structural. We don't dare to ask. For example, regional integration, Greater Bay Area, of course, they are very important initiatives. But are they really real hopes for young people? I know I recently met a young person from joining those GPA schemes. Because of joining the government's initiatives, then you would have something like 12 or 16,000 a month. But the problem he encountered is that, when he first report duty, joined the team leader in the GPA company reminded all the colleagues in the same unit and saying that, this is the 16,000 guy. He's having a salary higher than mine. Let's work with him. He's an apprentice, but he is the highest salary person in the team. And that guy worked there for about 3-4 months, and then he quit because he noticed that, if he joined the program for 1.5 years, after he finished it, and then he walked out to the labor market and tried to find a job in GPA, who would offer you 12, 16,000 RMB with only 1.5 years working experience? So he decided that, instead of giving people the impression that, he's a high-paced guy to work in GPA, he better start with a more humble starting point. We have to recognize that, there are structural gaps between the two labor markets. Of course, you say, you know, isn't it true that GPA offer you opportunity? Of course. Isn't GPA very promising? Of course. But the problem that I would like to raise is, what if I'm just an ordinary person? All those prospects, all those hopes, all those futures, do they belong to me as well? Are they reachable for me? I think that is something that we really need to look into, not only in job market, but in every dimensions that we have just discussed about engagement, about understanding, everything. Because we really need to talk about hopes, but at the same time, to convince our young people that, you know, there are tangible things that will come up very soon. Not just about finding a job, getting your salary paid, but things like forgiveness. You know, it shouldn't be just something that, you know, everyone thinks that someone should forgive another person. But at the same time, because of our legal spirit, we have to make sure that, you know, you will be sued at the time is right. I don't think that, you know, if I happen to be that kind of person, I think, are you serious? You know, are you seriously forgiving me or what? At the same time, I think hope has to be related to a very diverse population. We're not having just the cream. We're not just having the least resourceful people. We are having a lot of people in between. We have a lot of people who have gone through very different experiences in the past 3 to 5 years. And we have to recognize what are their differences and how can we talk to each other again with an understanding that, you know, we are still different, but at the same time, we can move on with a new hope on the same path for Hong Kong's future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tai-lok. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just throw a question to ask for the speaker's thoughts, and then we'll open to the floor for questions and comments, and then we'll also look into the Zoom and the Facebook chat and see if we have any other question. So I throughout the entire the presentations from the speakers, what I get is actually it's a very heavy-hearted topic, to be honest. I every time when Anthony asked me to moderate it, I just find it really difficult, even though, you know, day to day I'm actually dealing with youth, right? I'm teaching in the classroom, and I've been trying my best to provide a safe and free environment for them to discuss issues. But I find it also very, very challenging in a lot of ways, because we understand that there are laws there are legislation governing. So what I see with all the discussion is about love, about diversity, of tolerance, forgiveness, right? Hope, in a sense that it's not just relating to economic prosperity or economic hope, but rather it's something to do with emotional, affective. And I read actually last night on the 2024 policy address, which look into the youth policies. And quite a few of them was addressing to the youth. And most of them actually were dealing with economic development. And I just found it, how could we do it if we knew now that a lot of these things, they want to be listened, they want to be their voice to be heard, they want to feel loved, they want to be forgiven, they want to feel that there are hope, in a sense that I can feel that this is a home which I belong to, and when I come in, when I stay here, I would have, you know, people loving me, I have a future. But we see there's a disconnectedness between the actual feelings of the youth and the government. So what can we do now? We are having this discussion. Anything we can think of we can do about this? Or from the floor? Any comments? Any questions? Any comments?
Let me try. I think, as what Tai-lok said at the end of the presentation, we have to recognize that we have a very diverse population. and a diverse youth population. So sometimes when we use the same word, like love, hope, affection, maybe because of a different context, the things that we are actually talking about might well be quite different. Dealing with someone who fails in a DSE, when we talk about rebuilding hope, trust, it might be in a different context from one who is quite talented, well-educated, but who took part in the 2019 protests. In fact, some of the young people who were arrested, many of them, they were quite well-educated. So I think we have to really look into the specific situation. But trying to generalize, I think what we have today from our different presentations is that from the governmental or societal level, then we have to recognize the importance of listening, trying to get the young people's trust. And in order to get their trust, we have to listen, we have to respond to what they are anxious about, whether those things are entirely valid or not, whether we agree with their politics, whether we agree with their values or not. I think we still need to listen. So that's what a government should be. But then from the individual's perspective, a young person, different young people may have different perspective. Sau-ching mentioned his experience of coming to this venue, sort of getting through a tunnel, trying to see light at the end of the tunnel. And I was add further to that analogy by saying that, yes, first of all, you have to appreciate that you need patience in order to see light at the end of the tunnel. But you also have to realize that, acknowledge that after getting out of the tunnel, you still face the same busy traffic. So my point is the world is so complicated. So seeing the light at the end of the tunnel doesn't mean that once you're out of it, everything is, every problem disappears. You still have a life of problems. And if you look at it from a more religious angle, well, that's what God wants us to be. You have to face challenges, you have to deal with things. So I think in order to reconnect to a younger generation, we have to find out what and why they are anxious about. And then as society, as government, we are adults, we've been through that stage before. So how can we apply our wisdom to that? Now, those who breach the law, of course, they have to receive a penalty. I mean, that's what justice is in any society. But at the end of it, we have to reintegrate these young people. That's why we need to understand why they did things in the way they did. That's why I think, unfortunately, for this major uproar in 2019, I think up to now, we still haven't had the opportunity to conduct sort of a more in-depth reflection on why things happened the way they did. And if what Vincent said is the case, that many young persons, young offenders, after they're released from prison, for example, and they still find that they're not welcomed, they still feel this sense of loss. And if we believe in some sociological studies, in fact, you will continue to reinforce the kind of radicalization that you don't want it to be there, because that will perpetuate resentment or even hatred. So I think if we try to look at things from different angles, perhaps there are different solutions and different to address issues in different contexts.
Well, if I can try to respond to your question, it's one of the takes that I get from Sau-ching's presentation. I would rephrase it into we can build hope by building a more benign micro-environment. Every single individual to do a little bit more so that you get room for another person. But of course, this is a little bit ironic in the sense that Hong Kong has a very long history of NGOs with a very vibrant voluntary sector in contributing to social services, welfare, all kinds of things. But this is exactly at the same time, this is the important moment that we can not only to preserve the NGOs, but at the same time to expand and do more. Because one of the nice things about NGO is exactly that we will allow for diversity. The founder, based on whatever values that he or she has, they can push for certain things. You don't need to agree, but this is what we want to do, and someone would benefit. But in order to build this microenvironment, you also need to have a government to hands off, to allow, you know, more and more initiative to be picked up by the diverse, you can call it civil society or whatever, to take up that role. But again, it's ironic that, you know, nowadays you find that the government want to do more to replace NGO. Rather than like in the old days that, you know, they give you subvention, they give you money so that you would, by contributing. A lot of the time our NGO sector is getting government money, but at the same time they also contribute by raising fund, asking for donation, and do more than what has been given by the government. So if I want to respond to your question is exactly, you know, we need to rebuild a new microenvironment, a vibrant, you know, civil sector to respond to the diversities that we now have.
May I also add a point? I think it's also important to embrace hopelessness to some extent, that not everyone has to be hopeful. Because everyone's situation is different, and I think having a room that different, like everyone has a different journeys of like finding their role in a society and their personal values, that maybe at some stage it's actually totally okay to be hopeless. So I think I'm also trying to be aware of like when talking about hope, it's not that everyone has to be hopeful and then it's all optimistic, but also having room that sometimes people actually just feel hopeless and it's okay. And you don't have to be hopeful every day, right? It's quite stressful on the other hand. So so I think it's also embracing hopelessness and for allowing people to feel hopeless. And I think it's also important, yeah, just to highlight this point.
For me, I would put it this way. When I encounter the youth, I think the frequent question is, does the government really understand about them? The current I perceive the current situation is the government is trying to do it top down way, not really understanding the youth. They try to be, but I don't think the young people feel they are accompanied by the government. And this is actually what I'm doing with the young people. If you don't walk with them, how could you shed light on them? So my personal view is on this.
Very brief sharing. And I have heard a very famous notion. Perception is the politics. That's why I'm working as a researcher. For more than 20 years, I always pay attention to the perception, the feeling of our young people. That's why I have done a lot of survey. But I think that knowing their perception is not enough. That's why in recent years, my team and I myself are trying to turn their perception, no matter this is optimistic, low hope, or pessimistic. I need to take care of their perception, and then what we can do to make their perception into action and to make sure that young people can see the impact. So for me and for my team, despite the road is difficult, not easy to turn the perception into action, we are still trying our best to make action.
I hope the government is actually watching it on Facebook or coming as a participant in the Zoom so that they can hear our voices. So I would like to invite comments, questions from the floor. Any questions, comments?
Yes. Hello. Good morning. My name is Louis Doucet. I'm from the French consulate, so it was great to. I'm from a government, not the Hong Kong government.
Thank you so much.
But thank you very much for the presentation and the very different angles. It's very interesting. I come from a very different country, of course, but where challenges for young people, in fact, some of them are common. I mean, and the numbers that, for instance, Sharon, you gave, I think if you were to make the survey in France, you probably would have the same, more or less the same result. I mean, we have, big question mark about the future, whether our quality of life, the quality of life of our young people will be better than the one of their parents, which, you know, has always been what's driving, you know, creativity, entrepreneurship, and so on. You know, question marks about the climate change as well, which is something quite important in Europe and in France in particular. You know, whether we will be livable living in a livable planet. Of course, war and geopolitics play a very important role in Europe. And I think part of it is also applicable to Hong Kong. Of course, these factors are, in the case of Hong Kong, compounded by the events I mentioned. I forgot to mention COVID as well, where the perception, at least in our country, was that you protect the elderly people, which is good, but sometimes at the expense of younger people and you know, having to stay at home and not being able to meet friends. I think it played a role that, you know, I think on a personal level was a bit underestimated in how young people feel about the future and about social fabric. Now, of course, for Hong Kong, it's been compounded by also political developments. And we see and listening to you, I think it's quite insightful how the you know, young people are trying to play their part, but to have a dialogue, it takes two to tango. It takes two to have a dialogue, and we could reasonably expect from the government not just to talk about young people, which they are doing, but to talk to young people and with young people, and maybe this perception is, as you say, Professor Loy, a bit, is it really a dialogue? Are they really listening to what, you know, what young people are expecting? There's a question, and when this social fabric is with NGO, this micro environment that you mentioned is sort of changing, there may be a question as to whether this dialogue can take place. And of course, I mean, my question would be, to cut it short, would be, you know, when it comes to the people who have been affected by the event of 2019, Vincent, you mentioned it, just not just the people arrested, but all their environment. What are the signals that you would expect towards these people? Because I mean, we hear about you know, possible call for amnesty or for reconciliation, but it's not just about like not prosecuting them, because you have to have the rule of law, as Professor Cheung said. But will it be like to encourage companies to hire them after they serve the sentence? Will it be, you know, for government itself to try to hire? I mean, we could send a signal to hire young people who have served the sentence to show that, you know, they're ready to move on and to move forward. So basically, what do you expect from the authorities, or what could be the concrete, tangible way of you know, having these young people feel back back in the community and back in feel welcome back into society, and how they can contribute to Hong Kong, which is, you know, looking for talents, trying to attract talents from abroad, including from France. But you know, you have a lot of talents also at home, which cannot, maybe not yet play the full role in building and contributing to Hong Kong society and economy.
Thank you. Response?
Yes, actually, your question itself contains part of the answer. Actually, my observation is quite quite irony for the government to say, actually the correctional service department says, oh, we accept the, let's encourage the offenders to reintegrate into society, but the government itself does not hire any of these young offenders. Is still the case, I think, today. And if they do not do so, although I think quite a number of secretary for security bureaus or other department also said that they encourage others to accept them. But without this action, I think it's really difficult for the young people to think, oh, you are genuine, you are really accepting them. I understand there must be some boundaries. The government may think, oh, some industry or some work, it may be dangerous from their field to engage young people. But my point is, if they draw the red line clearer or less rigid, it may be more acceptable for the young people. Let's say for social work, maybe they have concern about the students, but how about the elderly? How about the rehabilitation people, like the ex-mentally ill people? I don't think the young offender status would really threaten their welfare. So the government will have to really think deeper as to if they would like to draw the red line, how to draw it. Would they tolerate a bit more? Some kind of improvement will still send the signal that, oh, you are trying to understand and welcome the young people.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just wanted to add, from on an individual level, for a person who would like to express her or his opinion on different social issues, where there room for, say, public gatherings to express their certain views on various topics, whether there is enough room for press of freedom to diversify the views. And I think it's about expanding the rooms of a wider variety of opinions. And I think that, at least from on an individual level, that's what people with different views, they would like to, or at least I would like to see. Yeah.
Okay.
May I just add one more point about reintegration, young offenders who have served the sentence. So some of them, that's what I heard from my friends in Project Change, they might have difficulty in getting back to studies or in finding jobs that they desire. And of course, it is right that government departments, major public organizations, they can set example. So to reassure the community that yes, we are on the path of reintegration. But probably the concern is this sense of risk aversion. Will there be risk? These young people who have served the sentence, yes, they have served a 3-year, 4-year sentence, but what if they have not changed at all? So they may continue to be problematic. They will continue to cause trouble. Now, to overcome that kind of risk aversion or worry, I think the most important thing is to really understand these young people. But by and large, maybe we haven't got the opportunity, the process of understanding for the society as a whole. Because when we talk about the red lines, we are looking into the negative aspect of people creating problems. But sometimes young people themselves could be the answer to the problem if we do it properly. I don't know whether it's Sau-ching or Sharon who mentioned the term space for microspace for our population of young people. And I think personal space is important. If we look back into Hong Kong in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, in fact, Hong Kong's progress was mostly due to individual efforts, not so much government-engineered endeavors, in contrast to some other societies. And the whole reason why that works is because people got the space and they thought that with that space, they could achieve something. So ultimately, it's a kind of micro politics which have changed Hong Kong or transformed Hong Kong. But then in the recent couple of decades, we are more talking about macro politics. So there must be a major movement in order to change things. But in the real world, actually, individual efforts, the personal endeavors could well be very political if we look at it in hindsight, macroly, sometime later.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for the response. And then we got a question from the Zoom from Mr. Tong. Question to Professor Cheung and Professor Lui. What is the way forward to academic inflation? Nowadays, degree graduates do not get managerial job as easy even as non-degree graduates 30 years ago. How do we deal with the juxtaposition between the education supply and the market's labor demand?
Well, my answer is very simple. It's very, very pessimistic because if you look at the users, the parents and the students, how they look at qualifications, credentials. Basically, a piece of credential is what we call, in academic terms, a positional good, which means that it's not whether you have enough. It's about the people near you, how much they have. When I started my teaching career, at that time, I think we still have diploma, and then to start to have degree program is a big advancement. So we have something in between, it's called higher diploma. A lot of people would be very happy. Nowadays, who cares about a higher diploma? You either jump into a degree or even a taught master degree and so on. Because most of the people near you have already got an undergraduate degree, so you need to have more. Same logic in the secondary school or primary schools when most of the students are playing 2 musical instruments, then you need to have 3 so that you will be more competitive with the others. So in terms of demand, there was always pressure, this kind of involutionary pressure in mainland, they would say gyun or loi gyun, right? So this is the kind of pressure. In terms of supply, of course, there will be ample supplies of these new programs. Quite honestly, nowadays, if you look at some of our local university graduation ceremony, in fact, the taught master program's class size is bigger than the undergraduate program. You would easily have a further expansion in the coming months or coming years. And now with finally the ultimate recognition that, the money that you made from taught master programs could help you to subsidize the fund-cutting UGC sector, then probably you would even do more. And at the same time, we never have an overarching control mechanism for that. So no one would pay any attention to the supply and demand issue, because if you ask the Welfare and Labor Bureau, they will say that, yeah, the Education Bureau should have some control on that. If you ask the Education Bureau, job creation is none of my business. So life goes on. So I'm very pessimistic. What will be the final outcome is, like a lot of country, at the end of the day, you issue a depreciation of everything. So now from today onwards, everyone needs to have a doctorate degree. Then you solve the problem of overqualification at the level of undergraduate. That's how I see it.
Okay, thank you, Tai-lok. Anthony?
Well, I think we probably need another session on education. I think we have to rethink what education serves. Because the question about getting a diploma, positional good, I think probably something carried over from the previous generation. I mean, my generation or my parents' generation, for example, if they did not have that qualification, they did not have the entry ticket to employment, to life. So basically, getting qualification is so important. But now, of course, the environment is so different. Everybody's got this basic first degree or even a second degree qualification, so that it doesn't distinguish you from the others. And secondly, what are you going to learn through your formal education? according to some studies, actually for kids now entering school, more than a great majority of them will not find jobs that what they are taught today will be relevant to. Because we have AI, we have knowledge changing so rapidly. So what are we ultimately trying to get, whether for educational purpose, or for qualification purpose? So I think we need to have deeper thought about education. But can I also respond to the next question on the screen about
Yes.
the GPA?
Perhaps I read it out so that the audience here know. Is it fair? Another question comes, is it fair to say that for the moment the GBA is more about top level design and there are actually still relatively few concrete initiatives for everyone, especially young people, for PPOL students, public policy students, any advice on future career options in GBA or Hong Kong?
We have the final session of this Policy Dialogue series next month on Think Asia and Think GBA. So we talk more about GBA next time. But let me say that to me, GBA is not just a market. I mean, for Hong Kong, throughout the past decades, we have never considered that our market is just Hong Kong. We're so externally oriented. Everywhere is our market. Everywhere is where we can find opportunities. So it's not just GBA, the whole of China, the whole of Asia. Some of our young our entrepreneurs, some decades ago, they went to East Africa, anywhere that they can find opportunity. So for me, GBA's relevance is not so much in terms of an enlarged market, but more in terms of our regional outlook, that we do not see Hong Kong just as the Hong Kong city, but we see Hong Kong as part of a larger community. And that larger community and Hong Kong's role in that larger GBA community is to act as the forerunner, because we are the most open, we are the most externally connected city. I think that's what makes us important. And therefore, I would not separate Hong Kong from GBA. In fact, Hong Kong is not separated from GBA. Hong Kong is part of the GBA. Hong Kong is a very important engine of the GBA.
Thank you.
May I add for the question on the public policy students? I wanted to share a recent story for the budget released last month, or actually, yeah, this month. One of another youth and I went to the electrical to sit in and listen to the FS sharing the budget. And I was observing who are among the audience joining. And then my observation is there are very few young people joining the budget and following what's going on. And then when I was chatting with some of my friends, they were like, oh, actually the budget doesn't really relate to me, or it doesn't really affect my life at all as a young person. And then there are actually not many attention on what's going on the news afterwards. And I think for public policy students who chose to do public policy, because I also did my master in public policy, and I really see or observe that there is a need for more engagement for like public policy students to be engaged with public affairs and try to expand our room for like public policy engagement as a public policy students. Hopefully there will be more students who are aware and follow about these important topics that not many people care or follow recently.
Thank you. So we have another question. Actually, we have a list of questions. We have quite a lot of questions from the Zoom. And Mr. Choi from UST asked about how might mental health services be enhanced to help Hong Kong University students who are depressed or hopeless.
I'm not specialized in mental health for the university student, but my past experience can, I think, bring a bit of some insights, if any, for the question. Basically, I think the mental health services are always available for those above 18, but the separation, the categorization is not too clear, especially for university students. They can always go to the adults part. There is called ICCM, the Community Center for Mental Wellness. But they can also go to the youth center for the mental health related service. But the question is, would they be really that connected to the those kind of community service? My observation is no. They usually, especially for those residing at the student hostel, they probably just remain in the campus, not connected to the community center, etc., etc. So my prelim feel is that it may has to. The burden may still be on the university to resolve part of the issue.
Maybe I can respond to that, even though I'm not one of the speakers, but I'm a program leader currently, leading an undergraduate program. I think you can actually talk to your program leader, and at the same time, I think you can also talk to the student affairs office in your university, because, I mean, take EdUHK, for example. We have the student affairs office, which has the counseling service, and they actually work closely with the academic staff to help the student. So I think you can definitely find help there. Okay. So any other? Okay. So we'll come to the next question.
Good morning, as speaker. I'm a part-time tutor in HKMU, and I see the topic and rebuilding the hopes and strength of Hong Kong for the young people. I think the most important point of this is we have to believe the young people. I think during the riot in 2014 and 2019, I do think that in fact the government or the general public is not believing the young people. You can see the entrance of the university. I'm not mentioning the Hong Kong UST, and nearly all the university has controlled access to the university campus. I think it is not lived till now, and all the student unions were taken part by the student affairs office, by the university themselves. That means, in fact, in our heart, we are not believing the young people. I have the opportunity to visit the correctional institution after the riot, and it's a very short-term imprisonment for the young people. And some of the young people stay here, have very, very serious family problem. I do not think that government have looked into this problem. And unfortunately, I do think we have to believe the young people. Okay, it's about here.
Okay, thank you so much. And we also have another comments that agreeing with Tai-lok's comment that whether the government is really listening, and there are many mixed signals. And then we got another question, comment actually. Unlike the millennium when everyone was hopeful, when technology exploded and the economy took off, of course, everyone was hopeful. Now with global instability and recession, the loss of hope is spreading around the world like a contagious disease. So it seems that, you know, it's not just happening in Hong Kong, it's happening in US too, when we see what is happening with Trump is now taking over, and then we've got this global instability. We don't know what's going on, which is very true. Any response to that?
May I respond to the first question? Is the government listening? To me, yes. I feel that the government is starting to pay attention to the voice of young people because the government knows that it is important to listen to their aspiration, to listen to their grievances. Otherwise, I'm afraid that another unrest or another kind of anger will appear. That's why I think that the government now is paying more attention and listening more to the young people. And from my experience, our ideas, our recommendations are, some of our ideas are incorporated by the government, but not all ideas, but some. For the next step, I or my team is doing our best to link up the government and the youth to make sure that there is a dialogue, to let young people to present what they want for or what are their ideas. Why the government, you do not accept the ideas? Can you explain to us? Or is there any ideas or any improvements for the young people can do? At least the government needs to explain or to face or to have a dialogue with the young people.
For the question, is the government listening? I think now is actually another situation. Is whether the people would like to speak. It's not. It's whether people would like to share their opinions. It's whether people are comfortable to share their thoughts. So I think it's actually for the current situation. My observation is whether the situation is whether people have not, I think not just the space, but whether people feel comfortable to share their thoughts. Yeah, that's my quick response. And for the second comment about the hope that is spreading, like loss of hope is spreading around the world like a contagious disease. My first thought or reaction is that hope cannot be cancelled. So I think it's about what we choose.
Yes. From the floor.
Thank you all for the fruitful discussion. And the thing that I want to share is that most of the point that I've heard this morning is that the government has, excuse me, the government needs to understand the youth and also to listen more about the youth. But the thing is, I think the youth themselves also need to take the accountability of their own action as well. They have to, like, complaining or keep moaning takes you nowhere. This is what I think. There's one thing that you need to keep lobbying, or you need to express your opinion, share your view. But then there's another thing that you have to, do the things that you want to do to achieve the goals. So you need to not stop complaining, but then I want to put it in a nicer way, is to do it both, share your view, but also just take your to acknowledge that you are the one that can affect or influence your future. This is my view.
Thank you. I just want to check, do we still have questions, comments? Okay, so I think that's the end of today's section, and thank you very much for attending. For those who are on the Zoom and on Facebook, before you guys leave, I would need to advertise for the next episode because I always forget. So I had to remember. So the next one is the 5th section on April 26, 2025. Please mark on your calendar. And that the topic is Think Asia, Think GBA, Hong Kong's regional strategy and positioning. We got really luminaries coming over to talk about. They're all experts on this. Of course, we have Anthony, Tai-lok, and then we have Brian Wong from Hong Kong U, assistant professor. And then we have Professor Practice Donald Low from HKUST. And then we have Dr. James Wang Ji-xian from the Bay Area Hong Kong Center. So please stay tuned and mark in your calendar so that you'll be able to make yourself available to the next section. Thank you so much.